Welcome everyone to the Seeker's Quest. It's good to be here with everyone. I'm here with Veda, Sar, and Chaitanya Charan, who we call CC. How are you guys?
I'm doing great. Just got back from a little trip.
Yeah, you were in Vermont, right?
New England area, yeah.
Checking out venues for potential retreats.
Yes, retreats for 2024, and we found this incredible place. It's called Mercy by the Sea.
Oh,
It's a Christian Christian retreat center that used to be a place for the nuns. So it's really pristine, really well kept up, and they are booked all throughout the year. Somehow we got lucky, and July 2024, 19th through 21st, we're doing our retreat there. So it has the capability of hosting 200 people.
wow. Is it actually by the sea?
It is by the sea. They got their own private beach on the Atlantic Ocean.
Wow.
And it's 35 acres. It's called Mercy by the Sea. It's really beautiful.
That's amazing. I'll have to look it up. Maybe I have to come crash your retreat, Veda.
Totally.
Mark it on your calendar, July 19th.
We want yoga crashers, yogi crashers.
That's great.
CC,
Great.
the video
what
is
about
not working, I think.
You having some technical difficulties, CC? You back? Okay, great. How are you? What's new with you?
Yeah. Yes. I'm having a lot of trouble with all my devices.
All right.
My laptop, my phone, my tablet, my camera, all of them experience of bad karma.
That's frustrating.
I think something is working right now.
Someone told me that CC,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Someone told me that CC was in Pune and he was doing a youth program. I think there were like thousands of youth that came to listen to CC, and everybody was giving him a royal welcome there.
Yeah, I see pictures of CC all the time doing his thing over there in India, and he's got like tons of followers. You're like a celebrity over in India.
Yeah, he's a wanted man.
Well, yes, we are very fortunate.
Haunted man
and we didn't hear that. Your connection.
I'm a haunted, hunted, and wanted man.
Well, we are very grateful to have some of your time each week here. Yeah. So maybe we should get into it here. We're going to talk about love again today. We've been talking about relationships for the past couple of weeks, maybe. Last session, we talked about saying no in love. We've talked about setting up boundaries in love. And today we're going to talk about love and the relationship with the divine, and how that relationship helps us better identify and discern love in our personal relationships. So this will be a good one. With that, CC, do you want to get us started here?
Sure, thank you. So now, generally, one of the biggest challenges in expressing and experiencing love is sort of differentiate between what feels like love and what is love. Now, this could be both for the self and for others. That means that sometimes we feel feel that what I'm experiencing is love, but it might simply be infatuation. And conversely, when somebody else is doing something, maybe that person is expressing love, but we may think of it as maybe just friendship, maybe just kindness. So both ways. One of the key challenges in having a loving relationship is understanding or separating or distinguishing love from the many things that may look like love. So put love on a spectrum, you could say on the negative side of the spectrum could be infatuation, which doesn't last for very long. On the positive side, there could be things which are not just love. They are, you could say, some kind of love, but they could be friendship, affection, kindness, and they are all good in their own ways. But they're not exactly the same as love.
Yeah, this is kind of interesting because I feel like with Hollywood and culture, we almost kind of grow up with this kind of facade of what love actually is. We kind of associate it with passion or with kind of losing ourselves in a sense. And then as we grow older and we gain experience in different relationships, well, I guess my own experience, I kind of learned the hard way that that's really not love. And sometimes it's even like not even good for you. That happened to me. If you have a bad picker like me, like I did when I was in my 20s. And sometimes what feels good in the moment is not good for you in the long run. So kind of being able to differentiate between what is love and what is just general excitement and passion can be a difficult thing. What do you think, Veda?
Yeah, this whole, love at first sight, it's just so flawed. It's love at first sight. That in itself should make someone pause and say, really, love at first sight? What you see is what you fall in love with. So it's extremely dangerous, if you ask me, because if what looks good just by using one of our sensory faculties, we have 5 sensory faculties, right? Just by using one sensory faculties, we come to this conclusion that we're in love. And that's just still momentary. Just looking at someone, they look good. Some people I know, I said, how did you fall in love with her? And he said, it was just her eyes. That was it. It was something about her eyes. And the girl also was like, oh my God, how deep is this person? He saw something in my eyes. I mean, there is so lost in not having the proper tools to find what love really is. So this infatuation really is a serious drawback in finding that true love. So in my experience, I say, slow down, take it easy. Find out a little bit more about that person's character. Slow down with the eyes and this constant attachment to someone based on just sensory faculties being involved rather than anything deeper than that. So that's been my experience with dealing with a lot of boys and girls. I remember in our Bhakti club at University of Georgia, we had about 1,400 boys and girls in the club. And one of the common weekly issues that I would deal with is this, this nonstop, I really thought she liked me. I really thought he liked me. And I don't know what happened. And I would always ask, how did you guys fall in love? It was just the way he walked. It just took my breath away. Or the way he, looked at me, it's just really this simple simplicity. And I would say more infatuation, as CC like to use that word. And you get completely obsessed with that simple connection. And simplicity, love is simple, yes, but it seems like it goes in the direction of something else other than love from that initial superficial attraction. So that's something I deal with on a weekly basis. Someone crying, someone got ditched, someone got picked up, someone's with someone else. It's just like this nonstop.
Yeah, you almost see something you're attracted to, and then you kind of fall in love with the idea of love, and almost convince yourself that this is it. And then sometimes in that mood you even kind of get blinded or lose yourself in it, just because you've kind of decided that this is what it's going to be. You're kind of attached to the idea of love.
Yes.
For me, these modes that in yoga that we learn, these tamas, rajas, and sattva, I operated quite a bit in rajas, and I could start telling when I was like in rajas, tamas, when I would feel that almost like this uncontrollable, like I have to reach out, or I have to connect with this person, or I can't stop, like that kind of mood. Just generally speaking, even not just relationships, but that just when I would start feeling myself coming into that, where it was almost like compulsive, it was like a time for me to recognize, like, okay, wait, I need to step back, make sure this is actually good for me. Because when we're operating in the mood of sattva, the mood of goodness, it's controlled. It's when you're progressing forward, it feels natural. It feels organic. It doesn't feel like something's overtaken you and you have to do this, or you have to be with this person, or the highs and the lows. So I kind of started trying to tune in to those modes to help me get to healthier situations or relationships, or and recognizing the difference of how I felt.
I like that point that you said that you're attached to the idea of love.
Yeah, it's almost like we humans seem to be trapped in a, it's almost like a custom-made trap for us, in the sense that we have this very deep feeling in our heart. We have a longing for love. It's both to love and to be loved. And simultaneously, not only that is there, we feel that we have a right to love. Just like we talk about the right to life, the right to justice. Now, the American Charter of Rights doesn't talk about right to love, but there is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And one aspect of the pursuit of happiness is love and loving relationships. So on one side, we have this deep longing for love and the right to love. We feel that we have that. And yet, what is love, or what seems to be love, can be very difficult to discern. It's almost like we say that, we have a thirst for water on one side, and on the other side, we are in a place just filled with mirages. So then, because we need water so much, we are going to look for that water. And because there are mirages, we are going to get caught. We are going to get misled. And sometimes if we rush to a mirage and mistake that sand to be water, then we put the sand in the mouth, it just burns. So in one sense, this differentiating between the water and mirage, between love and the things that look like love. Hmm? You could say love's lookalikes. Some people have their lookalikes, so we have love's lookalikes. So we could say this differentiating between this is one of the most important life skills. It's not just a life skill for success in life, but you could say it's almost necessary for survival. Otherwise, we will end up hurting ourselves terribly. Of course, we may hurt ourselves, others may hurt us, intentionally, unintentionally, whichever way. But that's the challenge for all of us. So it is a serious responsibility to gain, just like if you want to drink water and not chase after mirage. It's not just a casual curiosity, it's a survival necessity. So it's not just a philosophical thing, what is love and what is not love, but it is actually something far more serious. It's a necessity for our survival and for our thriving.
So it's interesting you put it in that context, Sissy, because it seems like people in this world, they are running for love, and you saying it's a very important decision to make. And it seems like it is the only thing that we are all chasing for in this world. And sometimes we switch through so many partners in pursuit of that love. Sometimes we give it all up and try and develop relationships with other species, interspecies love. And then, like people just fall in love with their dogs or cats or horses. And so it seems like life is nothing but a full-time dedication in pursuit of finding that love, because the mirage, you can see that, there's water there, but it's not really there. Am I making any sense? It's an observation I've had.
Yeah.
I was just thinking when he was talking, we all have this need to be loved and we all have this need to give love. And I think sometimes when our need to be loved is like much, much bigger, or like not fulfilled, or like maybe we weren't loved as children, or we just haven't received a lot of love, then that becomes our motive for a relationship. And in that, it's like a recipe for disaster, because likely you'll attract somebody at that same level who's looking just to give or just to be loved. And it can be really dysfunctional in that way, because you're really just projecting, like we talked about last class, you're projecting your insecurities onto the other person. So as he was kind of saying that, I was thinking, like, before we get in a relationship, it's so important to feel a level of love without a partner, without a dog. Like there should be a certain level of security that we naturally feel. That's almost like a prerequisite to really be able to give any love to anybody else.
There is this there is this prayer in the Upanishads. The Upanishads are basically spiritual literature which talk about a philosophical understanding of life. So they're similar to the Gita. And there they say that, whatever love we experience in the world, all that love, that it says the love of the mother, the love of the father, the love of the friend, the love of the siblings, the love of wealth, the love of position or power, all these are ultimately pointers to the love of the divine. So again, continuing that metaphor of the ocean and of water in a mirage, to the extent we have experienced the ocean, or we have the ocean accessible to us, to that extent we won't be running after every single drop that comes our way. But if this is the ocean, and if, say, we are close to the ocean, then if we see some drop here, we see some drop here, we see some drop here, we won't just chase after the drops, thinking that, oh, I want to get this, I want to get that. We will have a little more discernment because we have that ocean with us. And without that ocean, every single drop will chase it as if our life depends on it. And now, of course, every metaphor has its limitations, because in one sense, if you have an ocean, you may say, why do we need any drop at all? But in this particular situation, yes, the love of the divine is like the ocean, but at the same time, we are relational creatures, and we also need love in this world. But it's almost like we need to have some experience, some sense, some glimpse of that ocean, so that we don't keep chasing after the drops at any and every cost. Yeah, I look for the drops, but not at the cost that they take me far away from the ocean. They take me far away from everything else that I value. So that's where this connection to the divine, now this connection to the divine is what we call is established by Bhakti Yoga. So this gives us what you're talking earlier about the inner security, by which we can ensure that we don't get caught by any and every semblance of love.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's you see it play forward too, like in the world, if with people that have good parents or daughters that have good relationships with their dads, they're more likely to have healthy relationships with going forward. And that's not really the ocean, so to speak, but it shows that if foundationally you have that, then you're in a better spot. And for me, unfortunately, I didn't so much have that, but I found God. Well, I'm working on a relationship with God, and I witnessed firsthand how much that can give you, how the depth of inner security that relationship can give you in the absence of really any other relationship. And not even in the absence, but in a even more strong and profound way, because it's genuinely unconditional, that the love that you get from God and that reciprocal relationship.
I was thinking, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in a lot of ways, sometimes I'm grateful for the upbringing that I had, and that I felt such an emptiness because it led me to that. And I feel like that was more than I would have got anywhere else. Though I maybe would have settled because it was more sustainable. It wasn't the ultimate. So in a lot of ways, I'm grateful for that. But what were you saying, Veda?
I was just saying, how this drops of water, when you're so thirsty, every drop counts. We are so hungry for love that a little resemblance of that love, if we feel, we're ready to give our life for that person, or for the source of that love. And that's why these drops matter more to people than the vast ocean itself. And I've noticed this is very difficult for people to think, oh, there is, this ocean of love, go through God. And I'm like, here we go. I'm in this relationship. We just got together and everything's hunky-dory. Little do we know that this drops will not quench the thirst. And then when this drop runs out, then we go for another drop and another drop. And this is how we do it. And so this whole process of bhakti, inner security that we're discussing, it's true because the yoga texts are giving us all this knowledge. But it's really, really hard because you're really thirsty. And that drop of water, it gives you hope. It gives you like, yes, I'm feeling satisfied. I'm feeling quenched momentarily. So you see, Cece, the struggle that we're having.
Yeah, it's not just we all have the struggle. I think that's what to just elaborate on this example in another sense. Yeah, Radha also mentioned earlier about the drops, kind of upbringing we have. So we could say, we are at a particular point, and you could say there are drops all around. So there are some drops which take us toward the ocean, and there are some drops which take us away from the ocean. So in one sense, the drops themselves are not false, but where are those drops taking us to? So when we experience kindness, affection, love in some healthy relationships, then those drops of love, they're also drops in the sense that even in the healthiest of relationships, none of the relationships are going to last forever. But while they last, they can be so fulfilling, they can be so meaningful, and at that time they can be so overwhelming in one sense. So rather than simply dismissing the drop as worthless, we can also see that if a drop can excite me so much, if a drop can enrich me so much, then how much more would the ocean enrich me? So, but the point is that there are drops which point us toward the ocean, and there are drops which point us away from the ocean. That means that if we have an affectionate relationship, a loving relationship with someone who is devoted to the divine, or who has values which enable us to connect with the divine more, then that is like a drop which is pointing us toward the ocean. So to say that because it's just a drop, don't chase after it, that is unrealistic. So the struggle becomes tougher if we have to think, if we think that I have to choose between the drop and the ocean. But the struggle becomes a little easier when I think that I have to choose between the drops that take me toward the ocean, the drops that take me away from the ocean. So you're not forsaking the drops completely, but it's only those drops which take us away from the ocean.
I love this.
Yeah, wow. I do too. You just put the whole thing in context, Cece. I appreciate that. I feel like I almost made this mistake when I first came into Bhakti. I was like, oh, I don't need anybody. Now I have God. And then I remember reading the first chapter of the Gita when Arjuna's his qualification for getting imparted this knowledge was his compassion and his love for his family members. And it was almost like an aha moment, like, oh, okay, it's important. That's important. That's kind of how we start to develop. That's like our fertile ground for really being able to, for our bhakti creeper, for being able to grow spiritually. And these relationships, these healthy relationships are like integral to that. And so then I kind of backtracked a little and was like, okay, I need a healthy family situation to start to practice and develop some of those qualities.
I like this drops that are leading to the divine very much, because in the communities that we try to have around the world, bhakti communities, and we call this groups, that we call them the Sangha groups. That means like-minded people that are pursuing the drops of water that are leading towards the ocean. And that's what this whole Sangha that we have. And it's important to note for us, that drop that we are seeking, to make the right choice by joining the Sangha calls. Like we have these calls right now. The Sangha that we have to see how to get more people to the Sangha so that we can together go towards the ocean.
Hare Krishna, may I say something?
We actually will take questions. We can take reflections at the end. Thank you so much, though.
So, when we talk about Sangha and the idea of association, in one sense, it is universal, but it's also specifically essential for spirituality. Say, for example, any interest you want to pursue, if somebody is, say, a baseball fan, then they would naturally want the company of people who like baseball. If somebody is into stock market, then they would want to know other people who are in the stock market. There's so much you can learn. So in that sense, having an association that supports our interests is a universal principle. But it's specifically essential in bhakti, because in bhakti, we're not just talking about we're all interested in the divine. That is true, no doubt. We all share the same interests. But it is also that we experience the divine through that association. So now this is not always true for other things. It is that, say, a cricket match or a baseball match is different from a group of baseball fans. The action is at one place and the spectators at another place. Now we could look at their emotions and their enthusiasm, and that may affect it. That's fair enough. But the action is at one place and the spectators at another place. But in bhakti, that's not like that. In bhakti, actually, in one sense, the action happens largely through the representatives of the divine, through the spiritually minded bhakti yoga practitioners. So that concept that the venue of action and the venue of observation of spectators, they are not different. They are so largely the experience of the divine. It's not just the association. When I use the word a pointer, that there's some drops point us toward the ocean, some drops point us away from the ocean. So that metaphor, okay, this drop is there, there must be more over there in that direction if I go. That's true at one level, but it's almost like each drop that we connect with, that we experience, each interaction of spiritually minded people that we have, there's a part of us which starts longing for more experience, longing for greater enrichment, and that spiritual aspiration, that spiritual attraction that is triggered, that itself is in one sense the experience of the divine. So it's a little subtle point, and so the overall key principle that I'm mentioning is that it's this association, what you mentioned with that, it's vital. That bhakti in one sense is not solitary spirituality. It is, yes, there is a space for solitude, for individual reflection. There's a place for it, but it is much more, you could say, social or community spirituality. We have multiple relationships with multiple people, and through those relationships, we move closer to each other and closer to the divine. Radha, you want to speak something? Or continue.
Yeah, I was thinking how when we talk about Sangha, I try to always call it the bhakti unity, because the community definition, as you always have pointed out in the past, is the common unity. So it is the bhakti that binds the community together. The common unity is the bhakti factor. So that is what I feel is really unique about this practice that holds us so tightly together. And I used to always share this one story. I used to do gardening as something that I really relished. And in front of my house, I used to have 8 garden beds, and I used to grow so much food. Just by throwing some compost there, it used to grow. And the snow peas, they have this beautiful tentacles, and I didn't know much about growing them. And they have a tendency, if you let them grow, they're very gentle plants, creepers. And as they grow, if you don't put any stick, they fall over. But when you plant them next to each other, they hold on to each other, and they just keep growing and growing and growing, and you don't need any support because they're just holding on to each other. So when the wind comes, they still are holding on to each other. It was something that I really, really learned from these creepers, and how much I used to admire that these creepers must have been teaching me this principle of bhakti, how important it is that we need to have good association and hold on to each other, and together we grow. So that's something I think of whenever I think of community.
That's a beautiful analogy. I think when you come into spiritual life, there's definitely a shift in your relationships. For me anyway, like the relationships go from like kind of uniting on really, I guess, kind of from the ego, like people that support your conceptions of things, and people that when you are having a hard day will just kind of like validate you, or kind of things. I guess, yeah, people that will kind of cheer you on in the way that you want to be cheered on, that kind of feeds your ego. So the relationships go from like being ego based to like, now my best friends are the ones that I can explain a whole story to, and they'll say, yeah, but what did you do that caused that? What was your responsibility in it? They're really trying to help me grow closer to the divine by purifying me, by really challenging me to kind of step into that more. Does that make sense? So instead of like a relationship focused around each other's egos and kind of building up each other's own egos, it's like a relationship that's centered around pulling you closer to the divine by purification. So I think the quality of relationships in Sangha are different than the quality of relationships in like before spiritual life, I guess, for me anyway. And in that way, they feel a lot stronger too. It doesn't feel like they're built on a house of sand like before, like, oh, if I do this person won't accept me anymore. If I do this, because everybody accepts that we're all kind of flawed and we're all trying to get there together, and everybody wants to help each other get there together. But at the same time, in spiritual relationships, you're not like attached to what the other person does or doesn't do, or because you're not looking at that relationship to feed your ego. You're looking at that relationship to bring you closer to the divine. So in that way, it's just like much stronger, it feels.
CC.
Yeah, true. Yeah, so just a couple of short points. I'll have to leave by around 5:55 or so at the Indian time. So the idea that in this we're talking about, in one sense, love of two different kinds here. Love for the divine, which we talk about, is like the ocean, and then love for others in relation with the divine. So when we're talking about these two different kinds of love, we talk about one thing, that how, in one sense, this love is meant to point us toward the love for the divine. But there's another way of looking at it, which is true, no doubt, that this love also points us toward the love for the divine, also points us toward this love. We started by talking about differentiating between the drops that are taking us towards the divine, the drops that are taking us away from the divine. So we could say we want to differentiate between love and its lookalikes. So now one of the key differentiators between love and lookalikes is that love is characterized, at least to some extent, by an attitude of selfless service. And the lookalikes of love are characterized by possessiveness. So it's a self-centered or selfish possessiveness. So if we start with just this part of service and possessiveness, that basically we can talk about from two different ways. There are two people over here. Now, in every relationship, there is certain contribution and there is certain reciprocation. Or rather, we could put it, there is certain expectation. And this whole set of contribution, reciprocation, contribution, expectation, when it's done, that's what we feel is a reciprocal relationship. With love can be one-sided, but a loving relationship can't be one-sided. It has to be, some amount of reciprocation has to be there. So now, when we say selfless service, that doesn't mean that there's only contribution and there's no expectation. No, both will be there in every relationship. But in general, when this is the focus, then each person is thinking is, what can I do for you? Whereas when there's selfish possessiveness, it's the exact opposite question. Now, this is the same question which the other person should also be having. And that's a very healthy relationship, both ways. What can I do for you? Now, when there is the relationship of selfish possessiveness, then both ways, it's what can you do for me? Or what can I get from you that I want? Now, it's not wrong to have this question. But if this is the question that is primarily defining or driving the relationship, then that is moving towards an unhealthy side. And this is where generally, if what you are giving to me now, you stop giving that to me, then why should I care for you? If I am with you for your looks, then your looks are no longer there. Then why am I there with you? If I am with you for your money, if your money is not there, then why am I there with you? If I am there with you for your fame, for your popularity, tomorrow that is not there, then why should I be there with you? So that just brings me to the last point, that there's love for what we have and love for who we are. So generally speaking, many times we ourselves don't very clearly differentiate between what we have and who we are. Many people, for example, their net worth may be equal to their self-worth. So what I have becomes who I am. And in such a situation, it's very difficult to differentiate between somebody who cares for me for who I am and somebody who cares for me for what I have. But in one sense, through spiritual growth, we ourselves learn the difference between who I am and what I have. Now, that doesn't mean that what I have is unimportant. It's important in its own place, and I note it. So as we understand this difference, then we also are able to understand the difference between who cares, but whose love means they care for who I am, versus who cares for what I have. And that way, we can become more equipped to differentiate between love and its lookalikes. So to the extent, when we talked earlier about security is not just, understanding that I'm loved by God, that is loved by the divine. That's true. It's also understanding that I have a spirituality, a core that is different from my possessions. And to the extent we are secure in that core, to that extent we have realized the core, we have found some satisfaction in the core. To that extent we can also see those who are looking at us for who we are and those who are looking at us for simply what I have. Some people are very I won't use the word transparent. They are very obvious. They're just captivated by externals. And it's not too difficult to note that. But if we are ourselves externally driven, then we don't mind that. We think, oh, that's great. But if we are more internally situated, then we can also see who is internally situated and move in that direction.
See, if you go up a little bit, I just had one thing to share here, right there, where you say it's reciprocal. I wanted to say on the other side, and that other square, selfishness, is transactional. That's something that I kept thinking, how, I don't know if you feel.
That's beautiful. You could put it over here also as transformational. That when we deeply connect with somebody who cares for us, then their caring for us inspires us to become a better person.
Yes.
And our caring for them inspires them to become a better person.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you want to summarize before you leave?
Radha, you want to add something before we summarize?
No, that was nectar. I loved all your points today. I love that last one, how you made the point of Super Soul Within.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we're discussing today about broadly the topic of how divine love helps us to discern human love, or basically the relationship between the two of them. How the two are related. That is the broad topic of our discussion. So the first point we discussed was how, love and its lookalikes. Differentiating them can be extremely difficult. It's tough, but it's essential. Otherwise, we can fool ourselves, or others can fool us. And then we discuss one principle to differentiate. To learn to differentiate it is that we understand that each one of us has a relationship with the divine. So to some extent, if we are connected with this ocean, then that itself gives us security. And then we don't just randomly chase after any drop. The ocean is like the love of the divine love. The drops are like the human love. But that's not the whole metaphor. You could say a bigger part of the another part of the metaphor is that, say, where we are, if we consider there is this ocean here, and there are drops which point us toward the ocean, and there are drops which point us away from the ocean. So these are what we select, and these are what we deselect. So that means we choose spiritual association that enables us to go closer to the divine, and this is the basis of, we could say, healthy relationships. And then lastly, discuss that there is how. So in one sense, this point is that the human love points us towards divine love. And then here the last point was how divine love can point us towards what is real human love. That is not its lookalikes. So by being situated in the divine, our relationship with the divine, we learn to differentiate between who we are. It's not the same as what we have. And then we can differentiate between who cares, somebody who cares for who we are and somebody who cares for what we have. And that's how we can discern. Say, this is real love. This is more like a facsimile of love, which we may need to deal with a little more caution. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
So nice to be with
Thank
all
you.
of you.